On the phone, we have treasure hunter and author W.C. Jameson. He'll be hosting a special presentation on the Lost Adams diggings at the Texas Treasure Show in Temple. How are you today, Mr. Jameson?
I'm doing fine, Aaron. How are you?
I'm doing great. So, Mr. Jameson, how long have you been a professional treasure hunter?
I've been a professional treasure hunter for probably a few years, over a half a century.
And what's been your greatest find during your adventures?
There have been a number of finds that were significant in the sense that it involved perhaps dozens of bars of gold ingots, dozens of bars of gold, dozens of bars of silver. The discovery of such a thing, such a cache of treasure, is always a thrill. What a lot of people don't understand is that discovering some of this stuff is often easier than recovering it. When you find something that is in a remote area and you're just backpacking in, you can't carry very much of it out. So a lot of what we have discovered over the years is still lying back where we found it.
And so, in my notes here, it says you find a lot of this stuff in Mexico. Do you have issues getting this stuff back into the United States?
There are laws. The Mexicans do not, Mexican citizens and government don't like us taking things out of Mexico any more than we like Mexicans taking things out of the United States. So when we do recover something, we are basically forced to bring it back in a kind of a semi-legal capacity. People have asked me how I justify this. A lot of these gold and silver ingots, the ore was mined in what is now the United States by Spaniards back in the 16 and 1700s. They processed it into ingots, and they were carrying it back to government headquarters in Mexico City, when quite often they would be attacked by bandits or Indians, and they would have to hide this gold. And the survivors would return to Mexico City, report the incident, but more often than not, the government would not send a team of soldiers out to recover the hidden gold because they were fighting their own battles there in Mexico City. So a lot of that stuff was still hidden. Now, you need to understand that this gold and silver was mined with Indian slave labor. The Spaniards captured Indians, chained them by the neck, and forced them to work into the mines. I'm an American Indian. I look at it as going back into Mexico and returning with some of the stuff that had its origins here anyway. That's how I justify it to myself.
And you mentioned earlier that sometimes you've got to walk away from some things. You can only carry so much at one time. How does that feel, having to walk away from a big find like that?
Well, it's you always like to return with the treasure that you found. But if you found something like, in one case, we found 880 bars of silver, and we were on foot. There's no way we were going to return with that. But what we did do, we sort of harvest a dozen or so things out of the cache, and then come back, and then we would live off of that. We would, we've sent our kids to college on some of this. We don't owe anybody. We pay for our houses and our vehicles and things like that. So we use these treasure caches as our own personal banks, and go down from time to time and make a withdrawal, so to speak.
Do you ever have any sort of competition or anybody that you meet out there who's maybe a little hostile or doesn't want you to get to these things?
We have encountered, I guess, what you would call bandits from time to time. There have been times in the past when we've been involved in firefights, that is, exchanging gunfire. It's never like in the movies. It doesn't last very long. Sometimes it can be serious. I had a partner that was wounded in the leg one time, and I had a horse shot out from under me one time. But of the dozens of expeditions that we undertook in Mexico, this happened just only a small percentage of the time.
And so, can you give me just a little preview of what you'll be talking about during your seminar at the Texas Treasure Show?
I'll be talking about, my partner and I are going to be talking about our search for and ultimately the discovery of the famous Lost Adams diggings. This is an iconic lost treasure that people have been looking for over a century and a half. I've invested about 40 years in it myself, and finally, after all of the research and investigation I've done, it occurred to me that people have been looking in the wrong place all the time for this. And so we did some intense study on this and focused in on an area that is a long way from where everybody thought this lost mine was. And with a little bit of help, we went to the area and we found it. We brought in other sets of eyes to verify our findings. We wanted to make sure that we weren't just making a claim on our own with no supporting evidence. And we brought in other people who are good at this sort of thing, and they verified everything that we found, and they even found more stuff that solidified the whole notion that we did indeed find the famous Lost Adams diggings. We're in the process now of harvesting gold from the mine.
That is fascinating. I'm going to have to check that out at the Texas Treasure Show here at the Mayborn Convention Center. They'll be going on April 20th through the 22nd here in Temple. Have you been involved with this before, or is this your first year?
I actually started out with this many, many years ago. When it started out actually as a gathering of professional treasure hunters, and I think I may be the only one living still. And it's kind of turned into a metal detecting group, but all nice folks, and they do some cool things.
And WC, is there a website or a Facebook page where people who want to find out more about you and what you do, where they can visit?
Sure. I've got somebody manages a website for me. It's wcjameson.com. If there is a pertinent message on there, it's usually forwarded to me, and I generally respond to just about everybody.
Excellent. Well, thank you for joining me today.
Yes, sir. Thank you for inviting me.